Okay, so there's this massive shift happening on the world stage, right? And it's all about a group of nations called BRICS, who are basically reshaping global power as we speak. So what's the deal with their rise? Let's dive in.
And that quote, it really just hits the nail on the head. We're talking about a major story of change, of new powers rising up, and a challenge to a world order that's been in place for, decades.
And you don't have to look far to see this happening in the real world. I mean, take Brazil, for example. You're seeing American Fords just kind of disappear from the roads. In fact, a factory that Ford literally abandoned has now been taken over and totally modernized by China's BYD. And now it's pumping out electric cars. This isn't just about cars, you guys. It's a huge symbol of the growing ties between Brazil and China, the B and the C in BRICS.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty, the raw economic muscle behind this group. Because this isn't just some political club. It is backed by some seriously big numbers.
Check this out. Back in 2019, something huge happened. For the very first time, the combined economic output of the original BRICS countries actually surpassed the G7, the traditional club of big Western economies. That was a massive, massive milestone.
And believe me, it did not stop there. The group has been expanding, and with that expansion, its economic influence has just gotten bigger and bigger. So how much bigger are we talking?
40%. Yep. With its new members, the expanded BRICS Plus coalition now accounts for a staggering 40% of the entire global economy. A share that big, that gives you some undeniable clout on the world stage. That's not just a number, that's real power.
But wait, where did all this even come from? I mean, how did a simple acronym, something cooked up in an investment bank, turn into a real geopolitical force that holds summits and actually challenges the global order?
Well, it all goes back to 2001. There was this economist at Goldman Sachs, Jim O'Neill, and he was looking for a slick way to group the world's most promising up-and-coming economies. He saw huge potential in Brazil, Russia, India, and China, so he bundled them together under this really catchy acronym, BRIC.
And as O'Neill himself said, he wrote the piece, and the rest is history. What he probably didn't see coming was that the leaders of these very countries would take his little idea and just run with it. They turned an economic concept into a political reality.
And here's how that idea basically snowballed. So, after the term was coined in 2001, it took about 8 years for them to have their first official summit. A year after that, South Africa joined, and that's what added the S to BRICS. But things have really sped up lately, with new members joining in 2024 and 2025 to create the 10-country bloc that we see today.
Okay, so they've got the economic power, they've got a growing list of members. But what do they actually want to do with all that? And maybe more importantly, can this really diverse group of countries actually agree on anything?
Right, so that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Beyond just being big and powerful, what's the actual ambition that's holding this whole thing together?
And let me tell you, their goals are, well, they're not small. First off, they want to challenge the US-led world order that's been dominant since the Cold War. They're pushing for what they call a multipolar world, one with lots of different centers of influence. And a huge, huge part of that plan is to rely less on the US dollar for trade.
And this isn't just talk, by the way. We're actually seeing this de-dollarization happening. In China, for instance, their own currency, the yuan, is now used in more of their cross-border deals than the US dollar. And things like the sanctions on Russia have only pushed the BRICS members to move even faster on this.
Now, it's super important to get this straight. BRICS is not an alliance like the European Union, not even close. Yeah, there's been some chatter about a common currency, but for now, it's just that, chatter. They don't have a single market or a unified trade policy like the EU. Think of it more as a coalition, not a tightly knit bloc.
And this is where we get to the real drama of the BRICS Plus story. For all of its power, for all of its potential, this group is absolutely filled with internal disagreements and, frankly, competing interests. But hey, it's not all conflict. They have managed to get some big things done together that show unity is possible. The prime example is their new development bank. It's basically their alternative to the World Bank, and it gives loans to developing countries, often with way fewer political strings attached. It's a real, tangible achievement.
So when you put it all together, you get this fundamental balancing act. On one hand, you have this immense economic clout, almost 40% of global GDP, and real successes like the new development bank. They offer a powerful new voice for the global south. But on the other hand, the group is full of internal rivalries.
And let's be honest, China's economy is so massive it just dwarfs everyone else's, which gives it a ton of influence.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question. The economic size is there, no doubt. The ambition is crystal clear. But can this incredibly diverse and sometimes divided group of nations truly come together to reshape the world? Whether BRICS becomes a new center of global gravity or just a coalition of competitors, well, that's the story that's going to define the next decade.